reading from Psalm 63. O God, you are my God. Earnestly I seek you. My soul and heart thirst for you. My flesh faints for you. Is in a dry land and weary land where there is no water. So I have looked upon you in the sanctuary, beholding your power and glory. Because your steadfast love is better than life, my lips will praise you. So I will bless you as long as I live. In your name I will lift up my hands. My soul will be satisfied as with fat and rich food, and my mouth will praise you with joyful lips. When I remember you upon my bed and meditate on you in the watches of the night. For you have been my help, and in the shadow of your wings I will sing for joy. My soul clings to you, your right hand upholds me. But those who seek to destroy my life shall go down into the depths of the earth. They shall be given over to the power of the sword. They shall be a portion for jackals. But the king shall rejoice in God. All who swear by him shall exult, for the mouths of liars will be stopped. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Good morning. If I didn't get a chance to meet you before the service, my name is Gary Weber. I'm the pastor here at Aspire San Marco, and I know for some of you, you're here celebrating the end of VBS along with your kids, and we're so glad to have you, and thank you so much for entrusting your kids to us. You just got a little taste of the energy that filled this building all week, and so if you see anyone in a neon shirt falling asleep during the sermon, it's completely okay. They've got my permission. They've had a full week, and anyway, we're really glad you're here. Another tradition that we have at Aspire over the summer is we usually take a few psalms and we look at them in what we call a Summer Psalms Mixtape. We pick a theme, and then we look at several psalms that kind of cover that theme. And so this year, Summer Psalms Mixtape Volume 5, we're looking at songs in the key of hope, and we're trying to see what the Psalms can teach us about hope. Hope is one of those words that if your definition only comes from sort of slogans or Hallmark cards, you may have a false impression of what hope is really about. And so last week as we started, we looked at Psalm 13. And if you read Psalm 13, your first reaction is that doesn't sound hopeful because Psalm 13 can be kind of a dark psalm. But what we learned last week about Psalm 13 is that hope actually comes out of times of trials and struggles and difficulty. That if everything is going well in life, there is no need for hope. Nobody hopes for what they already have. You only hope for what you don't have. So it's in those seasons of longing, it's in the seasons of difficult times that you really have the opportunity to experience hope and to know what hope is really all about. And here's the thing about need and about longing is they never really go away, do they? At least not this side of heaven. We always experience. Think back to a time in your life, maybe when you were younger, and there was something you really, really wanted. Maybe it was like you were wanting, a bike, or you're wanting some new game system, or you're wanting a car, or there was something, and you're like, oh, if I could just get that one thing, life would be so great. Everything would be perfect. And then if you got that thing, you found out that life really wasn't as great as you thought it would be, right? And the thing broke, or it died, or it became obsolete. A newer, better game system came out. And so what happens is you find yourself getting the thing you hope for, and you're really happy about it, maybe for a few minutes, or maybe for a few weeks, or months, or years. And then you find reality sets in, and there is still some other longing, there is still some other need in your heart. That the longings and the desires that we experience in this life are sort of a perpetual thing. That we hope for something, and then maybe we get that thing we hope for, and then maybe we lose that thing that we hoped we would have, and then there's a feeling of despair and loss. And then as we come out of that, we find we hope again for something else, something better, something newer, something longer. So this great idea, this idea of longing isn't just something that we find in the Bible. We find it all throughout culture. In fact, the great contemporary theologian Bono said this: "I have climbed the highest mountains. I have run through the fields only to be with you, only to be with you. I have run, I have crawled, I have scaled the city walls only to be with you, but I still haven't found what I'm looking for." I'm so glad you guys knew the rest of that lyric. I was really a little nervous about that. Feeling my age a little bit when people don't know some of these songs. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. I've done everything I can. I've done everything the world says I should do, and I still haven't found the thing I'm looking for. Maybe a better Irish theologian, C.S. Lewis, said it better than Bono when he said this. Most people, if they had really learned to look into their own hearts, would know that they do want, and they want acutely, something that cannot be had in this world. There are all sorts of things in this world that offer to give it to you, but they never quite keep their promise. And then this very famous line, if I find in myself a desire which no experience in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that I was made for another world. And then he goes on to say this, probably earthly pleasures were never meant to satisfy it, but only to arouse it, to suggest the real thing. If that is so, I must take care, on the one hand, never to despise or be unthankful for these earthly blessings, and on the other, never to mistake them for the something else of which they are only a kind of copy or an echo or a mirage. I must keep alive in myself the desire for my true country, which I shall not find till after death. I must never let it get snowed under or turned aside. I must make it the main object of my life to press on to that other country and to help others do the same. What is C.S. Lewis saying? He is saying, listen, there are lots of things in this world that will promise you, if you just had this, then everything will be all right. And none of those things can keep their promises. There's no relationship, there's no amount of money, there's no position, there's no authority. Nothing can ever satisfy that deepest longing of your heart. But what Lewis says is that doesn't mean it's bad. That doesn't mean desire and longing is bad. It just means that maybe those desires and longings were put in you to point you past this world to a world where those longings and desires can fully and finally be satisfied. That everything in this world is only pointing you beyond itself. And that if you make the thing that is beyond this world the ultimate desire of your life, you will not be unsatisfied with the things of this world. Because isn't that what happens? Like we desire and we long for something and we get it and then we're disillusioned. And so we go through life, and the longer we live and the more disappointed we become, the more cynical we become, and we become jaded with all the things this world has to offer. And Lewis is saying, no, you've missed the point. None of those things were ever meant to ultimately satisfy you. That person was never meant to ultimately satisfy you. God was meant to do that. And so our desire needs to be for Him. But I don't know about you, that's something that I want in my life, but I don't wake up every day with this overwhelming desire that God is the main thing I'm after today. The main thing I'm after is God. I get pulled into all the things of the world, all the cares and the concerns of this world. And so I find myself a lot of times praying the prayer that A.W. Tozer prayed when he prayed this. Maybe you can relate to this. Oh God, I have tasted thy goodness, and it has both satisfied me and made me thirsty for more. I am painfully conscious of my need for further grace. I'm ashamed of my lack of desire. Oh God, the triune God, I want to want thee. I long to be filled with longing. I thirst to be made thirsty still. Sometimes that's the best I can do. I want to want you. I long to be filled with desire for you. But I am so enticed by all the temporary satisfactions of this world that I have to constantly remind myself and pull myself back to what my soul really needs, and the only thing that will ultimately and finally satisfy me is God Himself. And that's what Psalm 63 teaches us, that your soul will find its deepest satisfaction when God becomes its greatest desire. The only time your soul will ever ultimately be satisfied is when you realize that God is the greatest need in your life and that He becomes your number one desire. So here's the problem that I have, and maybe some of you can relate to this as well. How do I make God my greatest desire? Because I really want Him to be my greatest desire, but there are so many days where He is not. If I'm honest, He's not my greatest desire. How do I do that? Psalm 63 actually shows us how to make God our greatest desire, and He does it by describing three specific things. So let's take a look together how to make God your greatest desire and look at these three things that the psalmist David tells us in Psalm 63. The first thing he says is to seek Him as your greatest need. Seek Him as your greatest need. Now, before we look at verses 1 and 2, Let's look at the editorial note. If you've got a Bible, some of your Bibles usually have editorial notes. They're usually in italics right above the verses. These notes are not authoritative. They're not originally in the Scripture. They were added later across the centuries by editors who wanted to help you be able to read the Bible more effectively. But this one is really important. It says this on Psalm 63, a psalm of David when he was in the wilderness of Judah. Now that's important to know because the context of when David is saying this, when David is praying this really matters. If you were to take the time this week, and I hope you will, there's a suggested reading inside your worship guide, a suggested reading list. If you'll go and read 2 Samuel chapter 15, you'll see the story of what's going on in David's life. But let me just summarize it for you. David has been the king for a while. He's got a family. His family are now older. He's got a son named Absalom who comes and takes the throne away from his father David. And so David is running for his life. He has lost everything. He's been stripped away of his throne. His power has been taken away, his wealth, his position. His family is in complete and total shambles. And he is now writing and praying Psalm 63 while he's on the run for his life. And it's here. It's in this place. Not when things are going well, but it's in this place that he discovered that his soul was never really satisfied with all those things that he just lost. That the greatest need of his soul has always been to find satisfaction in God. Look what he says in verse 1. O God, you are my God. O God, you are my God. Now that may sound kind of simplistic at first. You think, well, of course David would say God is his God. But isn't it true that as you go through life, there are lots of other things that compete for the throne of your heart? You don't call them gods, but that's what they are. It could be money. It could be a relationship. It could be a person in your life. But there's something that becomes the greatest desire of your heart. And what David is saying is that, God, there is nothing else. Not my throne, not my family, not my wealth, not my power, not my position. God, you are my God. Earnestly, I seek you. My flesh faints for you as in a dry and weary land where there is no water. Notice all the personal pronouns. You are my God. I seek you. My desire, my thirst, my flesh faints. God is not some abstract idea to David. He's not a distant deity. He is David's God, and it's personal. See, your desire for God grows when God is no longer merely an idea you believe in, but the one you seek with all your heart. When God moves from being an idea in your head to being the king of your heart, it will make a difference. That he's not just an abstract idea that you come and you hear about on Sundays and then he's not connected to your life the rest of the week. That he is your God. David isn't just thirsty for relief from the situation that he's in. He is thirsty for God. And that really matters because for so many of us, when we find ourselves in difficult situations, we only seek God to get from God the thing we think we need in the moment. We want God to fix the problem that we're facing. We want God to heal us. We want God to remove the pain. We want God to restore the relationship, to save the marriage. We want God to improve our finances, or we want God to calm our anxiety. And none of those things are bad things. They're all things that we talked about last week. You should present those needs to God. You should desire those things. But Psalm 63 does not deny that those needs exist, but it presses us deeper. It says those needs aren't really the thing that you need. The soul's deepest need is not merely what God can give you or what God can do for you. The soul's deepest need is God. Because your soul will find its deepest satisfaction when God becomes its greatest desire. And it's in this moment that David remembers. Look what he says in verse 2. So I have looked upon you in the sanctuary, beholding your power and your majesty. Now remember, where is he? He's on the run. He's in the wilderness. He's afraid for his life. And it's in this place that he chooses to stop and wait for a moment and remember. He remembers when things were good. He remembers when he was worshiping God in the temple. He remembers when he was able to offer his offerings there with all the people. When God feels distant, David recalls what he has already seen and what he already knows is true about God. Your memories and what you choose to focus your attention on will feed your longing. If you choose to focus your attention on social media, if you choose to focus your attention on news, if you choose to focus your attention on the stock market, whatever it is, it will feed your soul. That is the thing that you are putting into your soul. And so what David remembers and what David knows is at this time of desperation, I need to fill my mind with remembering what is true and what is eternal. I need to focus on God. He rehearses the truths about God over and over when his circumstances would appear to contradict everything he's come to believe about God. It's in those times that it really matters how we shape our thoughts. This is why your spiritual practices, your spiritual disciplines matter. This is why attending worship on a regular basis matters. Because when we come here, we're having experiences with God, we're hearing from God, we're hopefully in God's Word on a daily basis, spending time in prayer, and it's in those moments that you're feeding your soul so that when you, like David, find yourself in the wilderness, you have memories to draw back on when things are hard. When you don't feel God, you remember those times when God was near. You remember those times when God did provide. It builds something in you for the next time you find yourself in the desert. So I just wonder how much time we spend on a daily basis building those memories, building those experiences with God that become the bedrock and the foundation for us when we find ourselves in difficult places. If you do not regularly behold God's glory, if you're not regularly beholding his majesty and thinking about his goodness, then everything else in your life will slowly grow and will become larger in your imagination. As God gets bigger, your problems get smaller. And as you focus on your problems and they get bigger, God gets smaller. And so we have to take the time and put the energy into saying, I will choose in this moment, I will choose to remember, God, your goodness. My circumstances don't seem to say that you're good, but I am remembering what is true that contradicts the circumstances I'm in right now. See, we don't stop desiring God all at once. That's not usually how it happens. Usually what happens is our desire for God begins to fade as the other situations in our life, the other circumstances, the gifts of God become more important to us, then our desire for him begins to fade. But if you want to make God the greatest desire of your heart, you need to seek him as your greatest need. But the second thing Psalm 63 teaches us is that you need to treasure him as your greatest joy. Look what he says in verse 3. Because your steadfast love is better than life, my lips will praise you. Because your steadfast love is better than life. Notice what David doesn't say. He doesn't say, your love makes my life better. He says, your love is better than life. Now think about this for a minute, because I'm afraid for too many of us, we want to say, your love makes my life better. Your love makes my life better. But some of you have lived long enough to know that's not always true. That you can be the recipient of God's love and are the recipient of God's love and still have terrible things happen in your life. Still go through very difficult, hard, impossible situations. No, what we have to do is understand that his love is better than everything in this life. That his love is what is primary. God becomes your greatest desire when you come to believe that his love is better than anything life can give and stronger than anything life can take. Are you there? Are you there? Do you truly believe that his love is better than anything that life has to offer you? Do you believe that his love is stronger and more durable than anything that life will ultimately, and it will eventually take it away from you? Do you believe that his love is better? Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't appreciate and recognize God's earthly gifts. They have meaning. Our family, the beauty of life, everything that God has given us is a treasure. But when we take those things and we make them the ultimate things, we are putting a weight on them that they were never meant to bear. There is nothing in this world that can bear the weight of a human soul. Only God can do that. God's gifts were never meant to replace God. They were only meant to lead us to him. And when you take a gift from God and make it ultimate, then you end up crushing it, or it ends up crushing you. Think about a relationship. Have you ever been in a relationship where you made that person the ultimate? that they were everything to you. And then that person couldn't bear the weight of that. Or maybe you've been on the other end and somebody has put that kind of weight on you and you can't be that, because we instinctively know that we cannot be for someone else what only God can be. We can't do for someone else what only God can do. There's no job you can get. There's no position you can acquire. There's no authority you can attain that can bear the weight of your soul. Because your soul was designed for eternity. Every position you hold will be temporary. Every job you have will be held by somebody else. Every relationship will go away by one means or another. But God can be the thing that holds your soul. But when God becomes ultimate, His gifts can be received with gratitude rather than things that we're grasping for. Rather than things that we're trying to consume, they become things that fill us with thanksgiving and that remind us who He is. Look what He says in verse 4 and 5. So I will bless you as long as I live. In your name I will lift up my hands. My soul will be satisfied as with fat and rich food, and my mouth will praise you with joyful lips. Now, remember, he hasn't left the wilderness. He's still going through the challenge. He doesn't know how the situation is going to resolve. He doesn't know if he's going to live or die. He doesn't know if he's ever going to be king, if he's going to be received back into his throne. He has no idea. His enemies have not disappeared. His circumstances have not been resolved. But David chooses to praise God anyway. And his praise is not pretending. His praise is actually reordering his thoughts, reordering his mind. His praise is teaching his soul what is truly worthy of his attention. It turns the heart away from panic. Praise turns our mind away from resentment and scarcity, and it turns our hearts back to God, whose steadfast love is always better than life. This is why desire for God has to be practiced. It has to be rehearsed. It's not something you just feel. We do not wait until we feel God is our greatest desire before we worship Him. We worship Him in order for Him to become our greatest desire and our greatest need. A lot of times when our feelings are driving our worship, we find ourselves fading further and further away from God. But when you determine that you're going to praise God anyway, even when you don't feel like it, then God will begin to reorder and reshape your heart and draw you back to Him. We worship so that our desire can be healed, so that our desires can be reordered, because your soul will find its deepest satisfaction when God becomes its greatest desire. And third, Psalm 63 tells us to cling to Him as your greatest hope. Look what he says in verse 6 and 7. When I remember you upon my bed and meditate on you in the watches of the night, for you have been my help, and in the shadow of your wings I will sing for joy. Now, when you first read this, you might be tempted to think, well, finally there's peace. It's nighttime. He's going to lay down and he's going to rest. That's kind of our image. But remember what's going on in his life right now. He's on the run. It's in the watches of the night that you have to be most careful, because that's when the enemy may strike. This is not a time of peace and rest for David. This is a time of high anxiety. He's aware that at any moment his life could end. At any moment his enemy could come and overtake him. And what is he saying? When I remember you in my bed and I meditate on you. He's not meditating on the anxiety. He's not meditating on the worry. He's meditating on God. I don't know about you, but a lot of times with all the noise and the busyness of a day, my mind only begins to process some of the things that are going on in my life when I'm still enough at night for my mind to begin to do the work of processing it. So you begin to think about, oh, wow, did I really say that? Wow. Did they really do that? Wow, what is that going to happen? And you begin to think and you rehearse those things over and over again as your mind gets still and those anxieties come to the top. Night is often when our fears grow the loudest, and it's when we begin to face our thoughts. But God becomes your greatest desire as you learn to redirect your mind towards Him, as you learn to take every thought captive and make it obedient to Christ. Especially when you're dealing with anxiety or loneliness, temptation, or fear, and they want to dominate your thoughts, they want to dominate your imaginations. This is why it is so important that you remember and you stop in those times and you, like David, think back. Who is God? What has He done? What have I seen God do in the past, or what have I read about God doing? Because He is the one my trust is in. I'm thinking about Him in the watches of the night. And look what He says in verse 8. My soul clings to you. Your right hand upholds me. My soul clings to you. Your right hand upholds me. This one verse from Psalm 63 probably captured me the most as I thought about it. As I read through the psalm and I was getting ready to share this with you, so I kept coming back to Psalm 63:8. And I think the reason that I kept coming back to it is because there seemed to me to be a little bit of a contradiction in it. Notice what he's saying. He said, my soul clings to you. David is clinging to God. But then the second half of it says, your right hand upholds me. And so I thought, which is it? Which is it? Is it David clinging to God, or is it God upholding David? And then it occurred to me, as I picked up my granddaughter, who is just 11 months old, and she clung on to me, and I was holding her. Here's the truth. If she had let go of me, I would not have dropped her. My ability to hold her was not dependent on her willingness to cling on to me. I was going to hold her no matter what. What if that is exactly what God is doing for you right now? What if in the middle of your wilderness, in the middle of the darkness, in the middle of the despair, when you feel like you are clinging for anything, you're grasping for anything that you can find some stability and security in, what if in that moment you really believed that it's God who is holding you? That it's God who has always held you? That it's God's steadfast love that has always been the thing that you have needed and longed for and desired more than anything else? That it was never about financial security. It was never about having the right kind of a relationship with the right kind of spouse, or the right kind of relationship with kids or your parents, or it was never about the right job or the right position. It was never about getting the right diagnosis from the doctor and getting the right medication and the treatment. It was always about God all along. That He has always been the thing, always been the one who has held you close and drawn you near. And even if and when you have let go of Him, He has never let go of you. It's not about your effort. It's not about what you have done. It's about your willingness to trust the one who has never let go of you. Because your soul will find its deepest satisfaction when God becomes your greatest desire. You know, as I was thinking about this message and the title for the message, and I thought about that song, I had forgotten the last verse of the song. And so I want to read you the last verse because I'd totally forgotten. The song ends this way. It ends with this. You broke the bonds and you loosed the chains, carried the cross of my shame. Oh, my shame. You know I believe it. I mean, clearly Bono is talking here about Jesus. You carried my shame on the cross. You broke the bonds of chains, and you know I believe it. But listen, he goes back to the chorus anyway. But I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Listen, please, church, hear me say this. That's the difference from somebody who believes something here and has allowed that belief to change their heart. You can know everything I said to you is true, and it still not affect you. Because you're still seeking answers in other places, and you will never know that God is all you need until you accept that you can have God only and still find the thing that your soul is longing for. What is your greatest desire right now? What is the thing you're longing for? What is the thing that you're thinking right now? If I could just get this, if I could just have this, everything would be fine. What right now, if God is asking you to trust Him and surrender that to Him, to let that go? And here's the thing. You might be here today and you're thinking, I can't do that. It's okay. We're glad you're here. This is a safe place. I hope you'll keep coming. It's okay if you're not there yet. We've all been in that place where we're not ready to let go of it. And maybe the best thing you can do is join me in praying with Tozer. God, I want to want you. God, I long to be filled with longing for you. God, I thirst to be made thirsty still. And so this week, I want to give you something really practical to do. I want you to begin each day with the prayer, oh God, you are my God, earnestly I seek you. And here's how you're going to do it. You're going to let Psalm 63 order your day this week. And here's how you do. We got a little formula for you. Every morning, I want you to pray Psalm 63:1. Psalm 63:1. Before you read anything, before you scroll anything, before you look for anything, I just want you to read Psalm 63:1. And here's what it says. Oh God, you are my God. Earnestly I seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh faints for you as in a dry and weary land where there is no water. And you might be thinking, well, that's really not what my heart really thinks. But it's what you want your heart to think. And so rehearse it. Let that be the first prayer. And then sometime in the middle of the day, at midday, pray Psalm 63:3. And here's what Psalm 63:3 says. Because your steadfast love is better than life, my lips will praise you. By the time you get to the middle of the day, if you're like me, you're being pulled in so many different directions, so many different ideas. And whatever you prayed in the morning seems like 100 years ago, but sometime, maybe just at lunchtime, you just pause. And you just remind yourself that God's steadfast love is better than life. And then at bedtime, the last thing you read, the last thing you say before you go to sleep, Psalm 63:6-7. And here's what it says. When I remember you upon my bed and meditate on you in the watches of the night, for you have been my help, and the shadow of your wings I will sing for joy. Seek God first in the morning. Praise him in the middle of the day, and remember him when you go to bed at night. Maybe you need to set 3 alarms on your phone. And just try it for a week. And see this week if your desire and your longing for God doesn't grow. You know, all these Psalms that we read, so many of them are quoted in the New Testament, and so many of them are quoted by Jesus specifically as he talks about what he came to do. And this particular Psalm 63 is one that he referred to as he's on the cross, and one of the final things he said is, I thirst. And of course, the soldiers tried to give Jesus something to quench his thirst. But Jesus wasn't saying, I thirst because he had a dry mouth. He was saying, I thirst because the greatest longing of his heart was God. Oh God, my God, why have you forsaken me? On the cross, Jesus was thirsting for the only thing he knew that mattered. And that was a relationship with his Father. Why would Jesus endure that kind of separation? Why would he endure that kind of thirst? He did it so that we wouldn't have to. He did it so you wouldn't have to. He did it to assure you that God is holding you by his mighty right hand. So today, if you are here and you still haven't found what you're looking for, can I just encourage you to look to Jesus? And if you're here and your head knows, you already know the truth of the gospel, but you still feel like you haven't found what you're looking for, can I just remind you to desire him more than anything else, and that he will bring you the greatest satisfaction in the thing that your soul ultimately desires?